Alrighty, I guess we can go ahead and begin. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I'm Julia here with Inspira. We're coming to you today with a really awesome webinar on PA school interviews. I'm joined by two really great panelists, which I'll introduce in just a second. But first, let's go on and touch on what we're going to be chatting about today. First, we're going to be touching on introductions, like I mentioned. Then we're going to be talking about what are PA school interviews and what do they consist of. We'll be touching on the formats for them, how to prepare for the interview, what to expect on the interview day so you can prepare ahead of time, common PA school questions and how to answer them, what not to do in a PA school interview, effective PA school interviews, and then we'll have interview questions, and then we'll have a Q&A session where if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can ask them at this time and just type them in the chat box. We ask that if there's something that comes up in between the webinar, if a question comes up, you just save the question for the Q&A spot. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and introduce our panelists today. Faith, if you want to go first, and then Sarah, if you want to introduce yourself afterwards.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Faith. I'm currently a second-year PA student at Yale School of Medicine, and I'm an admissions counselor here at Inspira.
And I'm Sarah. I am an active practicing PA. I'm on my third year of being a PA. I work in radiation oncology at Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville, Florida, and also an admissions counselor here at Inspira Advantage too.
Awesome. Alrighty, so let's jump into it. What are PA school interviews?
So, PA school interviews are pretty straightforward. This is exactly how a PA program will evaluate you and get to know you for being a PA student at that program. There's multiple different kinds, and sometimes there's one particular interview for that program, and then sometimes they're like a couple days or a day and a half, and they have multiple different formats. But most often there's a panel interview, MMI, traditional, a couple others. But usually they ask about your strengths, weaknesses, certain experiences you've had, like ethical dilemmas that you've experienced with a patient or some encounter. How you've problem solved certain situations in your healthcare experience or other experiences.
Awesome. All right, and what can we expect for the PA school interview format?
So most of the time, there's an aspect of a traditional interview, which is one-on-one with an interviewer who often is part of the staff and faculty of the PA program. They typically they'll ask you a lot of those questions about, ethical dilemmas and what kind of experiences you have, what you feel your strengths and weaknesses are. And then a lot of times they'll get more conversational about it and get a little bit more personal and just get to know you and the things you like to do and how you got here and how you got to an interest in medicine. So it can be kind of a big range of questions. Oftentimes they don't ask the very unexpected questions because they really want to get to know the things that they want to know. And it can be kind of scary one-on-one, but it can also be less intimidating at the same time, being without a lot of other people in like a group interview. And if you're more of an introvert or more, an introvert, a lot of times you can benefit from these because it's one-on-one and you can showcase yourself a little bit more.
And are these happening virtually or are they in person?
I'm sure prior to the COVID pandemic, they were mostly in person. And then since COVID, they have become, it can vary. Some programs are still having, virtual interviews. A lot of them have gone back to the traditional in-person interviews. So it can vary, but I would say it's probably going to be mostly in person going forward. Both really.
Okay, and then I guess we'll touch on the panel interview as well.
Yes, a panel interview is kind of multiple faculty members oftentimes, or current students, other individuals sometimes where.
Sorry, I think you're cutting out a little bit. I'm not sure if anybody else is hearing that.
Oh, sorry. Why?
I don't know if it's just me, but
just a little laggy.
Yeah.
So the interviews include people from different parts of the program, faculty, students, other instructors that come in from other parts of the healthcare system, interview you, and plus sometimes also another student apply with you. So this is more where specific questions about your experiences, strengths and weaknesses, and
oh.
Do you want me to wait, or do you want me to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, if you could jump in, that would be awesome. And then I guess when she comes back, gets her internet connected, then we'll go ahead and just jump in with her as well.
Yeah, sure. So for the panel interview, it's pretty similar to the traditional interview. Kind of the only difference is that you're going to have more people that you're talking to at the same time. For example, like maybe you'll have a student and a professor talking at the same time, or a professor and a PI, or any mix of any of those people that are connected to the school that you're interviewing at. But it's pretty similar to traditional interview. It's conversational and I guess more approachable at times.
Sounds good. Alrighty.
Great. And then for the group interview, I'll give it back to Sarah since she's
sorry.
Okay.
I had to get on my phone. I don't know what happened with my computer. Okay, sorry. So where were we? Group interviews?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, where did you leave off?
I was just about to start the group interview slide. I just did the panel for you.
Okay. So for group interviews, it's mainly with multiple pre-PA students in front of one or more faculty members. And in my opinion, this can be relatively intimidating because a lot of times the pre-PA students that are interviewing want to get as much of their details about themselves out and get the faculty member, they want the faculty members to know who they really are. But similar kind of questionnaires usually. Sometimes they'll ask questions like about collaborating with other medical professionals, and just kind of see how you would answer in front of other, prospective medical professionals. So there can be sometimes like group activities too, and they want to see how you're doing an activity with others and collaborating again. So yeah, that tends to be how the group interviews go.
And question, will they incorporate all of these types of interviews, or will they kind of stick to just one?
It can vary. I've been to programs and researched other programs and had interviews at places where they just do one, and it's a half day, and you maybe tour the campus or tour the PA school, tour the anatomy lab, and then they do a few one-on-one interviews, and that's it. And then I've been to interviews and looked at other programs where it's like a day and a half or 2 days, and you do multiple kinds of interviews. Usually it's just one, but it can vary.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is another one that can be generally is more uncommon, but strangely in the South, I've noticed it seems to be more common. Multiple minute interviews. So this format is often, if you kind of envision like a hallway of patient room doors that are all closed, they will have little panels on the front of the doors with like a medical situation, a patient story or whatever's happening, and then you have to go in the room and either kind of talk about what they want you to talk about on that form on the door, or it could be just another interview with somebody on the other side. They kind of tell you ahead of time on the door what's going on. But oftentimes I feel like these scenarios are mostly to see how you interact with patients, and to see your thought process. And if you think about multiple sides of, you'd like think about different angles of how to deal with something. I've had a couple MMI interviews where one of the examples was, this is pretty intense, but if a mom and a daughter got in a car accident and only one of them, you only had time with your trauma team to save one of them, who would you pick and why? And I had to write on a piece of paper in the room my answer. I had another one where I had to go into a room and I had to try to convince somebody to stop smoking cigarettes. And somebody was in the room pretending to be a patient, and I had to do that. So it can kind of vary. Most of the time, I feel like the faculty members want to see you consider all sides and come to a decision, to know that you're decisive, but also like considering everything. So this can be kind of intimidating as well, because you're rated on this performance. But preparation is always key, I think, in these. And you usually know if you're going to be walking into this type of interview beforehand, listed on their websites.
Right. Faith, anything else to add?
No, I think she covered everything. It's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Well, what a great segue into how to prepare for the interview.
Yeah. So how to prepare for the interview. One of the first things that you want to do is review your application, kind of know what you put into CASPA and know all of your experiences front to back, kind of remembering and reflecting on what you did, what you learned from it, kind of the timeline of how you did everything. That's pretty important. I know some schools will literally print out your CASPA application and highlight a bunch of things that they want to ask you about ahead of time, to fact check you and make sure that everything matches. And two is knowing common interview questions. So there are like books that you can purchase, or you can even Google online like common interview questions and kind of take time to brainstorm and come up with examples for each question that you might be asked, or just brainstorming like broad or general patient interactions or experiences that you've had as well. That would be a good way to prepare for the interview, as well as doing mock interviews or working with your consultant if you have one. Also, professionalism and dress code, whether you're on Zoom or you're in person, definitely dress professionally. Like, make sure your hair is nice and nice neutral colors and all of that, because they want to know, like, they want to see you as a PA, hopefully, when you get to the interview. Also, practicing timed responses. This is going back to the mock interview. Definitely practicing knowing which answers you want to keep brief and which ones you want to elaborate on, but making sure you're not rambling, things like that. And going back to what Sarah was saying, preparing for different interview formats. And again, they will let you know which format it'll be ahead of time, whether it's a traditional or a panel or MMI or a group interview. Make sure that you're going in with the right mindset, and understanding the context of what you're answering.
All right. Okay, so what can we expect on interview day?
Yeah, so for interview day, it kind of depends whether you're in person or you're online. Sometimes when you're in person, there might be a Q&A on the same day, or a tour around campus with the students, or informational sessions. They might have the same thing online as well. but they might split up into different days just because it's more convenient. And for example, when I did some of my school interviews, they also had us sit in on a sample lecture just to see what it would be like to be a PA student at their school. And yeah, normally they'll also have like coffee chats or dinners at night and some optional things. And those are some things that you definitely want to participate in if you can, even if it's optional.
For sure. Sarah, anything to add?
No, I think that was great. I went to University of Florida for PA school, and that's exactly how ours was. There was a 1 hour sit-in lecture where you just sat in during one of their lectures for the day. There were one-on-one interviews, group interviews, and then optional dinners with current students. And then the next day was a whole other half day of activities, coffee, the same thing. There's programs that are exactly like that. There's some programs it's just a half day and there's not as much involved, but that's definitely what my experience was like as well.
Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to touch on common PA school questions and how to answer them. I'm sure this is what everybody's kind of waiting for, so let's dive into this one.
Yeah, so this is such a broad question, and we're all going to get it, tell us about yourself. So, you want to talk about your strengths. You want to talk about what your strengths are that are going to make you a really great PA and what you think is going to make you a good PA. You also want to be open to any weaknesses, but always, always, always talk about how you would essentially fix the weaknesses. Not necessarily fix them, but how do you deal with them? And then, of course, talk to them about who you are and what you enjoy and why you were pointed into medicine. So, for example, and that kind of goes with extracurricular activities too. So for example, like my weakness, so you can talk about a lot of your strengths that are on your CASPA application. For me, I went on a medical mission trip. I did a lot of research in college. And then I talked about my childhood and young adult experiences with medicine, drawing me to becoming a PA. And then kind of the cycle of things of how I got to where I was interviewing. And then the weaknesses, I always talk about how I can bite off more than I can chew and kind of try to do too much at one time and then something suffers. But then talk about how, now having experienced that a couple of times, I know when I'm taking on a new task that there's another important task and not to take on too much and just be a lot more aware. And so that's kind of the fix, of that weakness. And you want to make sure you still put a positive spin on it like that. And then, of course, talk about yourself, what you enjoy, where you're from, that kind of thing, so they know that, you're a human too and enjoy things and have a family and go to concerts or go to, the beach. So they want you to talk about that kind of stuff too.
Perfect. Okay, second question. Why do you want to be a PA?
Yeah, so for this is a very personal answer, and it's going to vary from person to person. Like maybe you want to share a little story to answer this question about how you met a PA, or if you shadowed, or if you had like a personal experience or something like that. And then there's other reasons that people might want to be a PA as well. Maybe it's something logistical, such as I want to be able to switch specialties and I'm a lifelong learner and I want to experience different specialties. Definitely don't ever say, I wanted to be a doctor, but this was faster or anything like that, because PA is definitely not a backup option in that sense. It's its own pathway, and you definitely have to have a really strong reason to connect with the admissions committees on this question.
For sure. Okay, question 3. How have you prepared yourself for the PA profession?
This question sort of piggybacks off of what Faith said, how you really have to, this is going to vary person to person and candidate candidate, because your CASPA application really is a reflection of you and what you've done and why. And so this is the why, how have you prepared yourself for the PA profession? What are those things you did? So you really want to highlight very specific experiences and get detailed about it. And if you don't have those experiences, honestly, go get them, because they are really going to make you more individualistic and have more of a, just more personality and more to offer. If you have something different that not a lot of other candidates have, that's going to stand out to the faculty interviewing you. So for me, for example, I did a lot of research in college on drugs of abuse in animal models, and that is not something I think that PA students often experience. And so I talked all about that and why I got involved with that, and where I want that to take that with my PA profession. And so that I feel like can those very specific details can help guide you in explaining why, how you've prepared for this, for becoming a PA.
Perfect. And then question 4, how do you plan on overcoming the workload and other challenges of PA school?
Yeah, so this would definitely be a good time to bring in like a story or kind of walk the admissions committee through what you've been doing the past couple years or during college, or if you're already out there in the workforce, what have you done to like retake these classes or add on extra classes or even taking a post-bac? This question can be answered in, again, a lot of different ways. For example, one way that I answer this question for myself is I said that I was a full-time student and I was also a full-time EMT. So kind of just showcasing yourself, what can you do? What are the things that you can balance at the same time? It also varies from person to person, talking about your academics as well as what you're doing clinically and kind of touching on, if you look on CASPA, the other categories as well, such as like leadership, volunteering, research, all of that.
I think we may have lost Julia.
We may have lost Julia. Okay. I'm going to.
Oh, there she is.
Okay, there you go.
There you are. Sorry, you guys. Oh my God.
That's
I think we're all having technical difficulties today.
That's okay.
Okay. Question 5. Why did you pick our institution?
So this is less of a more individualistic question than did you do your research? The program really wants to know that you did your research, you looked into the program, you're not just applying to any and every school or just what's near you. They want to make sure you did your research. So there's very specific details that most programs list on their website about class size and the faculty and those particular campuses, other clubs and other opportunities that the program or the campus, the whole school itself may offer. When I went to UF and this question was asked to me, they had a campus-wide, but it was used for medical and PA students and pharmacy students as well to practice your clinical skills. They had free clinics that were run by faculty and then the students. And there were like 4 or 5 of them across the Gainesville area, run by the campus. And we got to volunteer and be a part of that. And I was on the board, the student board for it. So that was something I was very interested in. And I specifically mentioned that when they asked me about why UF, that was an interest of mine. So, find the detail, the specific things about the programs you really are drawn to and hone on those when they ask you these questions.
Perfect. Okay, question 6. What do you consider your greatest strength and greatest weaknesses in healthcare? I think we kind of touched on this in the first question, but by all means, let's
kind of, again, like what Sarah said, talking about what is your strength, but then coming around and saying, but this is what I'm weak at. and then addressing what did I do to fix it? How did I make it into another strength of mine? And what am I doing today? Any maintenance that you're doing to address the weakness is important as well. For example, if your weakness was, and this is actually my weakness as well, biting off more than you can chew, you can kind of talk about how it's affected you, such as, oh, you're so busy and it makes you sacrifice other aspects of your life, maybe like your family, or it's hurting your grades or something. And then kind of talking about, oh, what did I do about that? For example, let's say you had conversations with your manager, or you self-reflected and prioritized what you wanted to do and identified what was important to you and kind of just stuck to those things. And then talking about how it affected you, or how you keep yourself in check to not give into the weakness, things like that. And then again, like tying it back to the PA profession or how you perform as a student, that would be a bonus as well.
If you get asked this question, is there any weakness that you definitely should not mention?
That's a good question. Sarah, what do you think? I'll have to think about this one.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely not mention that you're not a people person. Like things that you don't want to look like you don't enjoy seeing patients, that you don't enjoy talking to people, because PAs innately, and in our own profession, we talk to patients and collaborate with other healthcare professionals all day long. And, you know, if you have a weakness that's more associated with, you know, not being empathetic or not being collaborative or not being a people person, I think that would be something that would not be good to mention. I don't know if most people who are applying to PA school don't have those qualities, but don't have that as their weakness. But you know, that would definitely be something I would avoid.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also say like any other trait of yours that would like affect patient care. Even if you say it's something that you're working on, it might just raise a red flag. Like for example, if you say like, I'm a careless person, like that might not be something that a program would want to hear. So definitely be mindful about the things that you say. Don't say anything that people think that you wouldn't be able to work on, or it's just a red flag in healthcare in general. And if you're attending this webinar, like you probably already work in the medical field in some like way. So you kind of have like the gist of what people are looking for and how to be a team player and all the things that you would need to take care of a patient or excel at your job, work with others.
Awesome. Okay, we kind of touched on this in the last question, and sorry, I did a little teaser. What not to do in a PA school interview?
Yeah, so, you know, you definitely want to be as professional as possible, and that is a very umbrella term. You never want to be late. You know, think about your grandparent or your parent who's like always saying, you know, on time is late, or whatever the phrase is. Always be on time or early. Know your school, know the details about the school, why you applied to them, make sure you're prepared, make sure you're organized, or what not to do. Sorry, don't be disorganized. You also want to come in with a positive attitude. If you look negative or have your arms crossed a lot and you don't look like you don't want to be there, a lot of times the faculty will see you as you don't want to be there. Lack of professionalism, dress appropriately. I remember I went to one PA interview and somebody had jeans on, and that is a massive red flag. And if I were interviewing somebody and they had jeans and everybody else had suits on, I would automatically have a bias in my head that this person is unprofessional. Rambling answers. You want to make sure you stay concise and clear. Sometimes you get excited and ramble, but don't ramble on because you don't know the answer. And then you start saying things that might not be exactly what you're trying to say. And also that kind of goes with not listening. You want to make sure you're clear and concise to the point and finish what you're trying to say. And make sure that the faculty gets opportunity to ask more questions. Not asking questions also can be kind of a little bit of a flag. You want to seem interested in the program. You want to see how they integrate certain things that you're interested in. It kind of goes with the preparation of the program. You want to make sure that you know what the program's about, what their strengths are, what you're interested in, and then ask questions from that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, and then I guess we'll jump into some effective PA school interview tips from the experts themselves.
Yeah, so kind of the same thing that we've been saying throughout this presentation. Research the program, know what makes the program special. Definitely don't generalize a program or say anything that you just assume. Make sure all your facts are right. Talk to alumni if possible or current students. You can always reach out on LinkedIn or anyone at your work that is associated with the school. And then practicing common interview questions like we talked about earlier. The 6 that we just went over, those are huge ones, and there are some others as well. Stay updated on healthcare. There's always hot topics going on. They might ask you a question about some new legislature or something that 2 sides are fighting about that a lot of people care about or certain groups really care about in healthcare that's going on right now. For example, during one of my interviews, I was asked about abortion. So that's definitely not off the table. Hot topics are always huge. Diversity questions about underserved populations, all of that, which goes hand in hand with prepare questions. You at the end, they'll always ask, do you have any questions for me? And you want to have some thoughtful questions on the tip of your tongue. You don't want to ask anything generic or something that you could just Google. If possible, be personable with whoever you're talking to, whether it's faculty, a student, or a PA associated with the school. And you want to ask them questions about themselves, make them feel like you definitely want to be there and you're excited. And if you can, look up the interviewers ahead of time and know who you're talking to. And also stay calm and confident, big smile on your face at all times. Sometimes fake it till you make it. Sometimes we're so nervous when we get in, but definitely keep smiling and show that you want to be there, because at the end of the day, you're in that interview for the right reason and you want to be a PA. Active listening as well, which means when a person is saying, or your interview is saying something to you, respond back in a mindful manner and address what they said, or if they make a comment, say something back and kind of reflect what they're saying to you, and demonstrating that you're actually listening instead of just moving on to the next question. Most importantly, be yourself. Don't try to be someone that you're not. If there's something that you're really passionate about, show that to the interviewers. If you have certain strengths or experiences, show that off as well. This is your time to shine and really show off your personality. The CASPA application was kind of looking good on paper, and now they want to meet you in person and see if you're a good fit for their cohort and the culture at their school and in the PA profession as well. So that's definitely important.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Faith. Sarah, anything to add to this?
No, that last part is exactly what I was going to say. You got an interview at this program. They think you look great on paper. That is a confidence booster. It was for me. And so going in knowing they feel like on paper you could be here, they just want to get to know you and make sure, again, like Faith said, you fit in their cohort and fit the student culture. It's your time to shine and be yourself and, show them the experiences and the strengths that you have on top of what they already know on paper. So, yeah, just be confident because they want you there too. It's just you got to show them who you are now.
I love that. Okay, so we've reached the Q&A portion of our webinar. I'll let our viewers kind of ask questions in the chat box, but one that's come up, and I think that we kind of touched on it earlier in the presentation, was that you have to practice your answers and make sure they're timed appropriately to make sure you're not rambling. How do you determine what answer you should like expand on and talk more about versus what answers you should keep brief? Is there like kind of like a general rule of thumb?
Okay, do you have anything in particular?
I guess like the first thing that comes to mind is like if the question starts with, or like the prompt starts with like, tell me about a time, or share with me, or walk me through something that's more open-ended. That's definitely a time to spend a little more time talking and elaborating. In general, you want to get your point across either way, whether it's a more brief answer or not, but you just have to be concise about it. But for the tell me about a time, or anything that prompts you to maybe like tell a story instead of just like a brief mentioning, that's when I would like include more details and kind of walk the person through it.
Yeah, I agree. Also, too, if you're passionate about something in particular that they ask you about, or that they ask that you feel is important for you to bring up as a PA, feel free to go into more detail. But when you're practicing answers, I think it's really important to practice answers in front of other people. It can be difficult to do that, but if other people around you are like, yeah, you spent a little too much time answering that, and you kind of rambled, maybe saying the same thing 3 times in a row at the end, that's good to know so that you can kind of cut it shorter while still getting your point across and getting the details in.
For sure. And should you, like, when you're practicing, should you continuously practice with other people? Because I'm sure, like, if you're practicing with your sibling or your friend or whatever, and you're comfortable with them, obviously you're not going to know the person that's interviewing them when you go in for the PA interview. So should you kind of switch it up and try and get other people to interview before your interview? How many times can I say interview in a sentence?
Yeah,
I would. I mean, the more the merrier for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if your school has like mock interviews, or if you have like a consultant, I think that's great as well. Just because you're not super buddy with the person that's interviewing you, so it's not awkward, and you can more get into the mode of like, hey, this is a person that's either like an acquaintance or like a stranger that I don't really know that well. So I'm just going to practice my answers so they can be unbiased about it. Whereas sometimes when we do it with friends and family, it can feel a little awkward, or you feel like you're faking it, and it just feels weird. But friends and family are great too. Or I know some people even practice with their webcams and like record themselves for Zoom interviews just to see how it comes across. So there's that as well.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I don't think we have any more questions coming up, so I think we're good to just end it there. I want to flag that this webinar will be recorded and sent out to all the respondents. So if you missed something, or if you want to go back and review, we'll be sending that out tomorrow or the following day from when this webinar is posted. I want to thank both our panelists for joining us today. Thank you so much for the insightful conversation, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.